Okay, now I believe we are live. You may begin, Sarah.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We are here gathered today to make short presentations of the three proposals that have been prepared for the World Federation of Young Theosophists. Well, the first one is going to be presented by Raphael, and we will explain a little bit about the Executive Committee and direct voting proposal.
So hello, well, my name is Raphael, and I'm going to explain briefly what is the first proposal, the Executive Committee by indirect voting. So here is the image that Sarah created from the table, and we'll give a bit more detail. So here we can sort of imagine how the federation would work. We can imagine all these people in the bottom here, young theosophists from different countries. And the whole idea is that one or two people from each country would choose who their representative is. And then we would have this kind of council of representatives, right? So the idea of the Council of Representatives is that it represents a lot of countries, which I believe to be pretty much the spirit of the World Federation of Young Theosophists, in the idea that we have this representation from different countries around the world. The Council of Representatives is similar to a different proposal, but what's unique about this proposal is that the Council of Representatives here is the highest authority in the World Federation of Young Theosophists. So, for instance, if something goes wrong, or if something has to be changed, or if there is a very important decision to be made, the Council of Representatives is the one who has authority to do so. And if you, as you can see, some countries could have fewer members, and they would choose someone to represent them, and some other countries could have many people, and they would still choose one or two people to represent them. That's because the Council of Representatives is supposed to represent a wide variety of countries. So that would be the Council of Representatives. So this Council of Representatives then would choose someone to be the director. That's very unique of this proposal. So there's someone who is going to be the director. And this person should propose a team of officers. This team of officers should be a group of people who can work well together. So they should be people who the director knows and trusts, so they can create a very effective team. This group of officers have to be approved by the Council of Representatives. So they should be chosen in dialogue between the director and the Council of Representatives, but keeping in mind that they should create a very harmonious team to work together, leading the work of the federation. So here we have the two big bodies in this proposal that compose the federation: the Council of Representatives with people from different countries, and the director and the officers. So the officers and the director, they are the ones who actually lead the work of the World Federation of Young Theosophists. Obviously, they can have all the help that they need. They can have help from representatives or from external people, but they are the ones who are responsible for leading the whole process. The director should pick officers who can work well as a team. That's sort of one of the advantages of this model. The director plays a clear leading and managing position. So that's also one of the advantages, in my opinion, that we have someone who clearly has a role to lead and to manage the process, and also, of course, has the responsibility. And if needed, the officers can be replaced by the director or by the Council of Representatives. So that model is quite flexible in that sense, because both the officers and the director can be replaced if something is going wrong. What does the Council of Representatives do? Well, they make important choices regarding the federation. So if there is a very big and important choice to be made, the officers and the director should bring this to the Council of Representatives because they have higher authority. They also supervise the work of the officers and support their work, and they have the power to interfere. So we know that sometimes people get really excited. They can say that they volunteer to be the director or to be an officer, but then life appears and something happens and they cannot work so well anymore, or things are not go as they expected, and this structure allows for change and adaptation if needed. So the director can be replaced, the officers can be replaced according to need. Because what's really let's say powerful in that organization is the Council of Representatives. So just to summarize, advantages and disadvantages of this model. It encourages clear leadership. So I think that's a very powerful thing to make the organization effective. And it also plays a very important role in the history of the Theosophical Society, to having kind of clear leading roles. The team of officers are formed based on capacity of working well together. So they're not like a group of people who happened to be together and now they have to work together, even though not necessarily they know each other or they like each other, and in that case, they are formed as a team based on people who know that they can work well together. The team of officers is flexible to change if needed. And that's a good point, because they are appointed, right? So if someone is appointed to a role, it's a lot easier to change, because if people are elected to a role, then it's a bit more complicated to remove them from that position. The higher authority comes from the representatives, which is the more democratic and capable of articulation group of the federation. So I believe it is still very democratic, because the highest and more powerful body of the federation would be the Council of the Representatives. The election is easier to manage, because the officers are chosen by the representatives, so we don't have a huge number of people who are voting, and that could be a bit difficult to manage. And the other advantage is that it's similar to other Theosophical Society bodies. So for instance, the Brazilian section has a very similar structure. So it's kind of familiar and coherent with other parts of the Theosophical Society. So what are the disadvantages? Well, there is a very clear hierarchy between parts, and even the director has a more power, let's say, than the other officers. So this clear hierarchy, I believe, was one of the reasons why people decided to propose alternative versions. So I suppose it can be seen as a disadvantage. And also, members who are not representatives have limited role. So they only vote for the representative of their countries. So let's say I am here in Brazil, and we choose someone else to be the representative of Brazil, let's say Ananda. Well, I wouldn't do much in that case. And I suppose in the other models, everybody can choose for the officers, can vote for the officers. So they kind of have this once every, 2 or 3 years, they have the chance to vote directly for the leading roles of the organization. Whereas in this proposal, if you are not a representative of your country, your participation is fairly limited in a sense, because you just choose who is the representative of your country, and kind of that's it, because your representative is the one who is going to vote for the director and the officers on your behalf. So those are the advantages, and that's the proposal A, executive committee by indirect voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael, for your presentation. So now the next one will be the proposal for executive committee by direct voting, which is going to be presented by Seth.
Yes, thank you. This one is a lot simpler. Sometimes there's beauty in simplicity, I suppose. So I don't have a PowerPoint or anything like that, but I do have this tiny little spiel that I'll go through. So the executive committee direct voting model is called the direct voting model because out of the 3 models to choose from, we're the only model that has a purely democratic election for the council coordinators. This means that there are no voting representatives and each person's vote, therefore, has equal power. To mitigate all members of the council being from the country that has the most voting members, we've instituted a maximum limit of 2 council coordinators at a time being from the same country. The overarching structure for the direct voting model is a council of coordinators who will make decisions as needed with a general coordinator to provide group cohesion and primary leadership. When the council coordinators make decisions, they have 2 options. If it is a rather mundane or time-critical decision, it can be made on the spot at the discretion of the elected council coordinators. If it is a more important decision that warrants the extra effort, then the council coordinators will host an online anonymous voting event in which all members of the WFYT will vote on the decision. So everyone in the WFYT would vote in that case. This provides a happy medium between an idealistic but impractical pure democracy and a more responsive but less representative pure republic. This direct voting model was born out of the desire to provide a middle ground, and we believe that this structure provides the best of 2 extremes while mitigating the weaknesses inherent in both. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. And the third proposal is the one named Board of Directors. And this is going to be presented by Jocelyn.
Yeah, I think it's Mattia, isn't it?
Oh, Mattia, sorry.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going through the questions of the scheme that Sarah made. So what is the role of the representatives according to the board group? So there is a council of representatives, and the representatives are a link between the board and the members, and they monitor the overall activities decided by the board of the officers, and if needed, has the power to move the motion of removing a particular board member in case of ethical problems. To visualize it, Jocelyn has made this beautiful scheme. So here we are. The representatives are selected, nominated, and elected on local basis. It means by country. And the representatives are from each youth group. While the officers are elected and nominated and elected on a world basis. And we have suggested 7 roles that we are gonna.
Sorry, Mattia, you mentioned like a picture, an image that someone created. Are you sharing anything?
Oh, yeah,
because
right.
we're not seeing anything.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. Okay, so.
Okay, now we are seeing. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. So you see, local elections for representatives, worldwide elections for officers. 7 roles for officers. We're going to discuss them, and the representatives are from each youth group by country. So, how are the officers or board members chosen? So there are 3 ways. The first way is nominated by the national section, or by another federation member, or self-nominated. This in case of individual members that are scattered somewhere, like for example, in Mexico, there are some people like that are scattered all over the country without a youth group of reference. So this is a self-nomination by themselves or by another member from another country. Just self-nomination, individual nomination. How is the working mode of the officers? So the officers are in cooperation with the representatives, and they follow a sociocratic decision making that we are looking at it later on. So we propose, it's just a proposal, of course, 7 sociocratic officers with respective duties working during a 2-year term, and the suggested roles are an education officer, a communication officer, a human resources officer, art officer, secretary, public relations officer, and TOS coordinator and volunteering action. So visualizing it is, how do the representatives and the officers work together? So for example, this is an example that is valid for all the officers. So there, for example, education officer. The education officer is supported by a group of representatives on a volunteer basis. And there are other volunteers from the whole members that support the officer. And why we have chosen this mode? Because we think that we have a very wide sharing between all the people involved, and all the people are actually involved without letting anyone outside of the process. This is part of the Sociocratic method. And as we see here, so the representatives serve as counsel for board members and vice versa, of course. They surveil each other, and they are a link between the board and the members. So the volunteers, or the members, volunteering in this case, support the representatives and learn the different aspects of field, and interchange their work between all the sections. Yes. So, for example, to make an example, if we have a 2-year term, we subdivided it into semesters, for example, and for each semester there are a group of different volunteers. So there is a complete involvement of all the people, while the officers will remain the same. Okay. So to spend some words on the Sociocratic method. So down here there is a very little and a little summary for on the Sociocratic method. It is pretty simple, but it may have some. The structure is simple, and then we have to to experiment it. It's something that you experiment, and it's not something that you go through in a structured way. So the basis is there are small groups, and these small groups called circles, they have an internal exchange of ideas and decisions. How are these decisions made? So there are some proposals from everyone within the circle, and these proposals are not voted, but as is written here, oh yes, circles decision making is based on consent. So if someone disagrees, he or she has to move like a you have to show what is not working on the proposal. So you make an adjustment, something like that. Okay. And we go on with this process until everyone reaches a good point, a good proposal that is good for everyone. Yes, so in conclusion, the advantages and the disadvantages of this proposal are, so the advantages are less hierarchical and more democratic, open, and potentially all-engaging environment, let's say so. It's original, modern, forward-looking, let's say, and challenging mode of structuring a federation. So in step with the times, let's say, and open to new ideas and open to a mutual sharing and cooperation. So yeah, here we have written duty and teamwork. So it is a joke, of course, it's teamwork, but teamwork gives the idea of being together in a cozy environment so that everyone may work together in a good way and not in a frustrated way, let's say, not authority-based or personally based. Yes. The disadvantages are that, yes, direct voting with a large number of members requires a lot of work, yes, of course, and is more challenging to manage. And due to the Sociocratic method, maybe the time to reach a mutual consensus may be a little longer than usual. Yeah. So I think it's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattia, for your presentation. So all these presentations have been recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube so that anyone who could not attend now is able to watch it later along with subtitles for any translation into any other language, along with also a comparison table that you can still check, and as it was sent by email. And then if there are any further questions, there is also an email that you can in which you can send your questions so that they can be answered before the voting. which will probably start right after this meeting, and it will long about 2 weeks or so. It's not decided yet. So I'm not, maybe now there are some questions of people who are attending, and let's see. Yes, Mansi wrote one question about the second voting type, which is the executive committee direct voting. And she says, a decision taken on the spot may be taken by representatives that may not be acceptable to others later. Although, according to his or her understanding, this may be the only thought he came across. I think this can be changed to taking a later decision with council rather than going for impulsive decisions by just one person.
That's a good comment, and that's definitely something that we may change down the road. So right now, I think we're voting on the overarching structure, one of these three. And then once we pick that structure, we'll go into detail and kind of hash out, fine tune exactly how it'll work with more voting and things like that. So that's something we may change. But on the other hand, that is kind of the bittersweet effect of having one person in charge. They can make that decision at their discretion. So that's just my my thoughts on that.
Good. There's also another question from Pauline for the first model. The members who choose the representatives for the executive committee model, indirect voting, sorry. These are only members from the youth groups of each country. So the national secretaries do not have a say in this, right?
Yeah, so what happened was that we wanted to make a big process of deciding how the constitution would be, and that would include both the general structure and the details. But then we decided that it would be very complicated to people to take decision on details if they don't know prior to that the overarching structure. So what we did is that we decided to vote first the overarching structure. That's what we are doing now. So we have 3 generic kind of proposals, and then later on we are going to decide the details. So for instance, if there is an age limit for each position, which age limit is that, or how long is a mandate, all the kind of details will be decided in the second round of decisions once we know the generic structure. So that one is one of the points. We have discussed this point that Pauline asked, and we didn't get to a conclusion. So that's also a point that we will all discuss and perhaps even vote. So one of the ideas was that the young people, so up to a certain age, let's say 35 or 40 of a country, which also is a member of the TS, that person would be able to vote and decide who is going to be the representative of that section. The other alternative that was thought was that the general secretary of that section would be the one leading the process and deciding who the representative of youth would be. But as I said, it was not decided yet, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion, and that's not intrinsic of the model. In my opinion, autonomy should be granted to the young members of each section. So they should be the one to decide, even though we should make an effort to involve the general secretaries of the countries in dialogue so they can participate as well, because we do want the federation to be in dialogue and communication with the sections in general. But the person who can actually take the decision, I believe, should be the youth. And if the general secretary has any reason to say that one person shouldn't be allowed to participate or anything, this person can bring the matter to the council, and the council can decide on that. So that's my view, but as I said, it's not intrinsic of the model. That is a detail that would be discussed further in the second round when we actually discuss the details of the model.
Yeah, as Rafael says, I think it's good to remind that this is kind of the first round, because a lot of brainstorming has been put on defining these three main proposals of how the federation would function and would work on an organizational basis. And from then on, other aspects and details will be still debated and discussed in order to find some consensus, and further voting will be done. Yeah. Okay, so in the chat, I don't see any other question. I think
Jocelyn
like
raise her hand.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, this is not a question, but I just wanted to point out that to me, the sociocratic method, it looks confusing and it sounds confusing, but it's basically what we're doing right now. We got together a long time ago. We decided that we wanted to do this, and a lot of people disagree with the what role we were going to take. So we got divided. We did 3 groups, and we're now getting together into choosing the structure. And then the next step will be choosing the specifics of the structure by voting and making sure that everybody agrees. And it is a longer process, but that is basically what the Sociocratic method is, just to simplify it a little bit.
Thanks. Yeah.
So perhaps if there are no more questions, should I stop the transmission? So it's 30 minutes long. I think it's fine to people to watch. Okay, so if people have any further questions, please send to any of people who are leading the process or to the specific email. Thank you for taking part.